सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya.
So we had finished the 8th mantra, 3rd section, 1st chapter, and we are on the 9th mantra. Let us chant. Esho nuratma chetasa veditavyaha.
एतोनुरात्मा चेतसा वेदितव्यः
Yasmin pranah panchada samvivesha.
यस्मिन् प्राणः पञ्चधा संविवेश
Pranaischittam sarvamotam prajanam.
प्राणैश्चित्तं सर्वमूतं प्रजानाम्
Yasmin vishuddhe vibhavat yesha atma.
यस्मिन् विशुद्धे विभवत्येष आत्मा.
Okay, so we carry on. Now the word Vishuddha Sattva was used in the last mantra. There is a explanation of that over here. So he says, Eshaha. The first word is Eshonuratma. We have to break it up into Eshaha Anu Atma. Anuhu Atma. So the ra disappears because of the Visarga. It becomes Eshaha Anuhu Atma. Eshaha means this. Anuhu is in actually Anu literally means an atom, or very small, very minute. But used in the context of the Atma, at least in the Vedantic context, it has to mean that the meaning is to be taken from the very minute thing. Like the atom cannot be easily comprehended or cannot be comprehended, cannot be grasped by the sense organs. So in that sense, it is Sukshma, subtle. So Anuhu here has to be taken as subtle. So Eshaha Sukshma Atma. This Atma is very, very subtle. Just as the atom, a very minute matter, cannot be comprehended by the sense organs, this Atma cannot be comprehended because it is very subtle. And now, non-perception, if you look at the fact that something cannot be grasped by your sense organs, so we are talking about the Anuhu part of it, right? If you look at the idea that something is beyond the grasp of your sense organs, so we are talking about Anuhu here, Sukshmaha. It can be due to two reasons. One is indeed Anuhu, like it is very, very minute, and therefore it cannot be grasped by the sense organs because sense organs require a certain amount of measurement for it to be comprehended. And the other is what this non-grasping can take place because there are no attributes to grasp. There are no gunas to grasp. And therefore, Anu can mean very minute and thus cannot be grasped, or can mean does not have attributes and cannot be grasped. Okay, Nirgunam. So when traditional commentators talk about this particular mantra, they go into all this. Does it mean Anuhu minute like an atom and therefore it cannot be comprehended? Or does it mean attributeless and therefore it cannot be comprehended? Attributeless can be taken as infinite, right? Because something which does not have an attribute has no boundary. And no boundary means infinite. And therefore the debate boils down to this Anuhu, literally meaning very minute. Does it mean very minute or does it mean infinite? Why is this doubt at all? Because there is a school of Vedanta called Vishishta Advaitins. They take it that Atma is very minute and therefore it cannot be comprehended, it cannot be seen. Right? If you remember the Bhagavad Gita, long ago we have done. Okay. If you remember the Bhagavad Gita, and especially chapter 2, which we did more than 3 years ago, there is a sloka. Nitya Sarvagataha Sthanuhu Achalaha. So Achaloyam Sanatanaha, which is Achalaha Ayam Sanatanaha. Okay. What did we take it as? Nitya is fairly clear, eternal. Sarvagataha is fairly clear, all pervading. Thanu is the word which the Vishishta Advaitins catch on. What is the meaning of Sthanuhu for Vedantin? Anybody remembers?
Not moving.
Thanuhu is not moving, that which cannot move. And why is it Thanuhu? Because it is Sarvagataha. Anything which is all pervading cannot move and therefore Thanuhu. So we take it as Thanuhu, all pervading, not moving. Now the beauty of Sanskrit is you can break up this word in different ways. The word Sthanuhu, right? So Vishishta Advaitin breaks it up and into two words. He says Thaha plus Anuhu. Thaha plus Anuhu. So he rearranges that particular sloka to say Krishna actually meant Nitya Sarvagataha Thaha. That is one part. Right? Not Nitya Sarvagataha Sthanuhu, which we say, because Nitya Sarvagataha Sthanuhu means that is which is eternal and that which is all pervading because and therefore cannot move. Therefore Sthanuhu. Sarvagataha, therefore Sthanuhu. But this Vishishta Advaitin says, no, no, no. You have to break it up as Nitya Sarvagataha Sthaha. Anu is a different word. And therefore Nitya Sarvagataha Sthaha is the same meaning that we take. Paramatma is all pervading, eternal, and therefore cannot. And Sarvagataha Sthaha he takes, right? All pervading. Nitya Sarvagataha Sthaha means Paramatma, Atma is all pervading. And then he says Anuhu is different. That Anuhu doesn't pertain to Paramatma. He said, you Vedantins, you are saying that Krishna is talking about the Paramatma only, about the Atma only in Nitya Sarvagata Sthanuhu. But no, that's not the way. You have to break into two pieces. Krishna talks about both Paramatma and Jivatma. Nitya Sarvagataha Sthaha, all pervading eternal, therefore Paramatma. Anuhu, the size of an atom, very minute, therefore Jivatma. And therefore, there are many number of minute Jivatmas which is pervaded by Nitya Sarvagataha Stha Paramatma. One Jivatma is not there. There are millions of Jivatmas, all very, very minute, and therefore they are all pervaded by the Paramatma. When there are 1,000 Jivatmas or 1,000,000 Jivatmas, where is the question of Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam? So Vishishta Advaita says, Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam is a concept which can never be accepted. Because of this, and the beauty, he takes the same sloka which we take to say that Jivatma and Paramatma are one. But he takes the same sloka, he does a break up in a different way, and he says they are different. Right? Which meaning should we take? We are Vedantins, so we take the second meaning, that it is Sukshmaha. It is so Sukshmaha, it has got no attributes at all, and therefore we cannot, the sense organs cannot recognize it. So Anuhu is equal to Sukshmaha is equal to Pancha Indriya Agocharam, not perceivable by the Indriyas. And then what? Then Chetasaha Veditavyaha. Such a Atma which is described in the earlier sloka, earlier part of the mantra, Veditavya has to be understood, grasped by what? Chetasa. Chetasa is the mind, the intellect. Chetasa Veditavya, that very attributeless, very sukshma Atma, Brahman, has to be understood by the Chetasa, by the mind. And the mind should be a adhikari mind, a qualified mind. A mind, an adhikari mind is what? Sadhana, chatushtaya, sampanna mind, free from rajas and tamas. And a very focused mind should be there. Okay. Now, another small point here which can be thought about is this Jivatma, he requires a mind for knowing, right? But this Paramatma, this Ishvara, does he require a mind? Because Paramatma, you say, is omniscient, knows everything. Does the Paramatma require a mind? And if at all he requires a mind, what is that mind? Okay.
No, Raviji,
Yes, Ratarji.
Paramatma is all the minds put together, no? According to Tattva Bodha.
Paramatma is all the minds put together, which we call Maya, right? So that is what is the answer over here. That Paramatma doesn't require a mind, separate mind, because there is Maya. The totality of all the minds is Maya. Okay. Now, talking about knowing, it's an important aspect which we have discussed earlier, but I will repeat it. The process of knowledge of any object has two aspects, right? So let me give a small example to again, remind you of the discussions earlier. Supposing there is a rose in front of you, right? Now, Shastra says that when you look at the rose, the mind flows out through your eyes and the mind envelops the rose, right? And then that because of the enveloping of the rose by the mind, there is what flows out is the function of the mind, right? So that's called vritti. And therefore, this enveloping is called vyapti. This, all pervasiveness, enveloping is called vyapti. So when this mind flows out through your eyes, sense organs, and envelops the rose, there is a thought formed in your mind. This is the operation of the eye pramanam, of your aksha pramanam. Your eyes have now begun operation, and through the eyes, the mind has flowed out and enveloped the rose. And this particular aspect of getting knowledge is called vritti vyaptihi. So we have discussed earlier also. Vritti vyaptihi is when the inert mind covers the object, and therefore the object thought, the object vritti is formed, right? Now this is object vritti is there, but there is no knowledge there. Why? Because the mind is inert. The vritti has been formed, but it has not yet been recognized. To recognize that thing, that this is a rose, you need the second operation of consciousness. So that is called phala vyaptihi. So there is this when the consciousness pervades the vritti. So first the vritti, the thought, pervades the object, envelops the object, and then the consciousness pervades that thought, making it live, and therefore you get this idea, this is a rose. Right? So that is called phala vyaptihi, recognition of that object in the form of the thought, this is a rose. So there are two operations. One is the covering, one is the revealing of the object by the inert mind, the inert thought, right? And one is the consciousness pervading that thought to generate knowledge. So two operations are there. Vritti vyaptihi, phala vyaptihi. It is in the second operation, phala vyaptihi, that the knowledge that this is a rose is gained. Now, though I have, for the purpose of understanding, I have presented it as if there are two different operations, vritti vyapti and phala vyapti. They are almost simultaneous. They are instantaneous, and therefore, very often we don't see the difference at all, and we say, okay, I have recognized this as a rose. But this is the process that Shastra says. First, the inert mind, the inert thoughts, they flow out, they reveal the object, and then consciousness, which is pervading that thought, that inert thought becomes alive, and the object is actually understood as this is the rose. Why is all this important in this discussion? Because in the knowledge of Atma, right? Remember, what is the second operation? Consciousness is pervading the thought, right? What is the thought? This is a rose. So there are two operations. The inert thought, this is a rose, vritti vyaptihi. The pervasion of consciousness into that thought, this is the rose, becomes knowledge. That is phala vyapti. There is vritti and there is knowledge. Phala means the knowledge here. Now, this is true as far as any object in the world is concerned. Supposing we are now looking at the Atma knowledge, Atma Jnanam, right? Only vritti vyapti will be there. Phala vyapti is not involved in Atma knowledge. This is the speciality of Atma knowledge. Why? Because you have to consider how the Atma is recognized. How do I recognize that I am the Atma? Like you recognize this rose through a thought which says this is the rose. The only thing is, this is a rose is a inert thought. It is anatma, vritti. And therefore, phala vyapti is needed because consciousness has to pervade that thought. But when you are applying this model to Atma Jnanam, what is the first thought? This is the Atma. Right? What is the problem with saying this is the Atma?
Objectifying Atma, and it's something separate from you.
Yes. When I say this is the rose, what is it? I am the pramata. I am the knower. And that is the rose, the known object. Right? But in the vritti vyapti, the pramata and the prameyam are the same. And therefore, you cannot have another thought saying this is Atma. Because if you are going to say this is Atma, you have to ask who is this, who is saying it. Therefore, all that is required is that the ignorance that I am Atma needs to be removed. And that is done by vritti. Vritti removes the ignorance that I am not the Atma. Right? I am the Atma is the thought which comes in. Once that is there, that Atma, if you do a comparison with the rose needs to be revealed through consciousness. And that is why phala vyapti is there, because consciousness needs to pervade the vritti. This is the rose. But when this is the Atma thought, or I am the Atma thought, phala vyapti is not needed, because Atma is Swayam Prakasha. It is self-illuminating. Right? So the vritti, what it does, it doesn't really reveal the Atma, it removes the ignorance, and then the vritti goes away. And this is the way it says, Chetasa Veditavyaha. This is the way the mind should understand the Atma. Okay, that is the meaning of this. Very, very beautiful way of presenting it. This commentary is, of course, Shankara's. And then, where should you look for this Atma? So, Shankara says, Asmin Sharire. In this body only you have to look. Right? And what is this body? Therefore, you look at Asmin is, Yasmin here, the word Yasmin in the second line of the mantra is Yasmin Sharire, in the body. Yeah. And then Pranaha Panchada Samviveshaha. Yasmin Sharire, in this body, prana. The pranas have entered in 5 different ways, are residing in 5 different ways. Some Viveshaha means has entered. What are these 5 different ways? It should be pretty obvious. Mantra doesn't say, it should be obvious. What are they?
Hello, Ravi.
Yes, Nataraj.
See, there are 5 senses. So the only way we get knowledge is through these 5 senses of perception.
Okay, that's also equally acceptable. You can also say it's as a pancha prana they have entered the body. Okay, right. Therefore, as yasmin sharire, in this body only that Atma is to be discovered. And what kind of Atma is it? Pranaishcha chittam sarvam otam prajanam. So that I'll break it up for you. Pranaihi chittam sarvam otam prajanam. So that consciousness is present how? As is presented in the form of the Atma is present as consciousness. So Shankara gives an example. He says it is all pervading. This example is to show that it is all pervading, and therefore chittam cha sarvam pranaihi. Pranai chittam sarvam. The entire mind along with all the sense organs. So prana here used in the meaning of sense organs. The entire mind along with all the sense organs, prajanam, in all living beings, otam is woven. Otam and protam are 2 words used for weaving. So there's a straight weave and a vertical weave, horizontal weave and vertical weave. So otam is being used in that description. It is completely woven into the living being. This Atma and the sense organs, they are woven into the living beings. And Shankara gives 2 examples. He says, he is clarifying the word otam, what is meant by woven. So he says, Shiram eva snehena. So Shira is milk, Sneha is fat. So he says this is pervading in the body just as milk is pervaded by the fat. Right? You can't distinguish which is milk and which is fat. It's completely, invisibly, completely pervaded. He gives another example. Kashtam eva agnihi. Kashtam is firewood and agnihi is the fire. Just as the firewood is pervaded by the fire when it is burning. You cannot say which is the wood and which is the fire. Similarly, in the milk, you cannot say that the sneha, the fat, is only at the top or only at the sides or only at the bottom or only in the middle. It is pervading through and through like the thread pervades the cloth. So in the same manner, he says, this antakarana, the mind, and the body is pervaded by Atman and is therefore conscious. Because of that, what? This consciousness principle called the Atma, when you want to look for it, if you have to recognize it, it can be found in the mind. From the consciousness principle aspect, if you're looking for Atma, you have to look at the mind. From the existence principle of Atma, if you're looking for it, you can look anywhere. Anything which exists is pervaded by Atma. So from the existence principle, one need not look at oneself. One can look outside also. Whatever exists is consciousness alone, because that is the Sat aspect. But if you're looking for the consciousness aspect, the awareness aspect, you will not find it outside. You will find it only in your mind. And therefore, from the point of where the knowledge is situated, from the point of the locus of the knowledge, that locus is Pramata, the subject consciousness, the knower. But from the view of the Prameyam, the object of the thought, that same Atma, which is the Pramata, from the point of view of the knower. So there are 2 aspects. From the point of view of the knower, the Pramata himself is Atma, right? From the view of the object which is known, that object is also the Atma. So what is being said, whether it be subject or object, it is the same Atma which is pervading both. And when you say that, you have to extract from there one important point. Because Atma is pervading subject and object, that distinction is not a logical one. And therefore, the only conclusion is that Atma is neither the subject nor the object. It is the very adhishthanam, the very support. It is the framework in which subject and objects are existing. Okay. Then we look at the last part of the mantra. Yasmin Vishuddhe Vibhavati Esha Atma. Yasmin Vishuddhe. Yasmin here refers to the mind, the chittam. Yasmin Vishuddhe. When that chittam, when that mind gets Vishuddhe, purified, Esha Atma Vibhavati. This Atma becomes evident. Evident means it's easy to recognize. So here is saying that, which we all know, that when the mind is disturbed, it is not that Atma is not there, but the attention of the mind is focused on the various disturbing influences, and therefore you don't pay attention to the Atma. When the mind is quiet, which means thoughts are not there, disturbances are not there, then Esha Atma Vibhavati. And that is why Yasmin Vishuddhi. The mind has to be calm. It has to be free from impurities. So Vishuddhi is defined, Shankara defines it as Viyukta Malaha, free from impurities. What kind of impurities? Klesha Adi. So Shankara's definition of Vishuddhi is Klesha Adi Mala Viyuktaha, free from the impurities like Klesha Adi. What should this remind you of? Klesha Adi.
Ragadvesha?
No, Bhagadesha, one of them. But where do you find the reference? Sundar?
Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the 6 kleshas.
Six, 5 kleshas, not 6. Okay. So 5 kleshas are what? Anybody knows? The first and basic klesha is what?
Avidya.
Avidya. Avidya is what? What is the definition? Anyonya adhyasaha. The definition of avidya, anyonya adhyasaha, mixing up of atma and anatma. And because atma and anatma are confused, therefore you think that you are anatma, which leads to the second klesha, asmita. Asmita is I am. I am anatma, ahankara. In this ahankara, there will be raga and there will be dvesha, third and fourth kleshas. And because you think you are the ahankara, you cling on to the body-mind complex. And that is called abhinivesha, deha abhimana. So 5 kleshas are there: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Instinctive clinging to life. So he says, this you have to be free from. Then only the mind can be quiet. And then what happens? Then the vibhavati, the Atma becomes visheshena vibhavati. It becomes very clearly evident. Right? And of course, here we have to add one more thing. Just because you have a calm mind, because from the looks of it, Yasmin Vishuddhe, when the mind is clear, Esha Atma Vibhavati. This Atma becomes known. So that is a possible interpretation, is a wrong one. When the mind is clear, when the mind is calm, the Atma can be known. That interpretation is incorrect one. The interpretation should be that when the mind is calm, then you can come to the teacher to Shastram, Shravanam, Maranam, Nididhyasanam, and then know the mind. But it's possible only when the mind is calm. If it was possible for you to know the Atma with the literal reading of that mantra, like when the mind is calm, Atma will be known, then the entire Shastric teaching saying that go to a guru, that would be not relevant at all. And that is there in this particular Upanishad itself. Okay. Any questions? All right. We'll go to the 10th mantra, which is the last mantra of this particular section. Yam yam lokam manasa samvibhati.
Yam
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 lokam
manasa
manasa
samvibhati.
samvibhati.
Vishuddha sattva kamayate yamscha kaman.
Vishuddha
Vishuddha
sattva
Shuddha sattva
kamayate
kamayate
yamscha
yamscha
kaman.
kaman.
Tam tam lokam jayate tamscha kaman.
Tam tam lokam
lokam
jayate
jayate tamscha
kaman.
kaman.
Tasmat atmagyam yarchayet bhuti kamaha.
Tasmat
Tasmadhyam
atmadhyam yarchayet bhuti
kamaha.
kamaha.
Okay, so you guys should really practice doing some, chanting of the Upanishads, because the more you chant, the easier it is to understand. So we are coming across a different sadhana over here. What is the sadhana? The sadhana is the worship of a jnani. And in most of the Upanishads, in most parts of the Shastram, you will find that there is a lot of importance given to the puja of a Atmajnani, the worship of a Atmajnani. And why is that so? In fact, Ishvara Pujanam is prescribed as a sadhana throughout the entire Gita, if you remember, for acquiring sadhana chatushta sampatti. And jnani is what Krishna himself says. Jnani is not different from me. Therefore, jnani puja is also equivalent to Ishvara puja. And it will give you the same benefit that Ishvara puja gives you. So indirectly, this mantra here says that if you have a guru who's a jnani, then that guru puja is no different from Ishvara puja, because guru and jnani are the same. Ishvara and jnani are the same. So he says yam yam lokam manasa samvibhati. So this is a glorification of the jnani. Yam yam lokam manasa samvibhati. Whatever worlds the jnani thinks of, tam tam lokam jayate. He attains those worlds. Okay. So what is it saying? By pure sankalpa alone, without doing any effort, just by thinking of the world, of some particular world, the jnani achieves that world. And this world has to be taken, the word lokam here has to be taken as an object of desire, right? What as a desire itself. So generally what happens if I have a desire, let us say to buy a new car, I need to put in an effort. I need to work, I need to accumulate the money, I have to go to the car dealer, I have to pay the money and take the car and drive it home. So that there is a amount of effort which goes in. So, but here he is saying sankalpa matrana, purely from the viewpoint of the jnani this is being said. Okay. Remember, the jnani also has a mind-body complex, and therefore this statement has to be understood very carefully. This statement is from the viewpoint of the jnani. Who is the jnani? Ishvara. So it is from the viewpoint of Ishvara. And the most common mistake people make is that they take the mind-body complex of the jnani as the reference point here and say that this jnani can achieve whatever he thinks of. He can go to whichever world he thinks of. So if he thinks of Swargaloka, he will land up in Swargaloka. If he thinks of Brahmaloka, he will land up in Brahmaloka. If he thinks he wants a motor car, immediately motor cars will be mobilized. And that is why you find all these stories where, godmen are there and they materialize things from the air and they give it to you, right? There is no such thing possible because the body limitation is there for everybody. Upadhi limitation is there for everybody. The jnani cannot materialize some sort of a watch more than you can. There is no power separate from us in that jnani. Therefore, this particular idea has to be accumulated, has to be understood from the point of view of the jnani. What is the jnani's viewpoint of the universe? He says, I am Brahman, I am Ishvara, right? If I am Ishvara, where are the worlds? The worlds are also located within me only. Because Ishvara is the world, in fact, is every world. Whether you say Sarga Loka, Brahma Loka, whichever Loka you say, it is Ishvara only. Every Loka is within him. Every object is within him. Therefore, the object is not different from the jnani, and that is why it is said, Tamscha Kama Jayate. All the desires that he has are already present in him. The word Jayate is being used, but are already present in him. So, if this jnani wants to be Lord Brahma for the time being, he is, because he is Ishvara, right? And that is why if you look at the Veda, because maybe 85% or 90% of the Veda is Karma Kanda. What is Karma Kanda? It is devoted to karma, and the idea is to do various karma to achieve my various objects of desire. And therefore, here the language is not the language of Vedanta. The language is the language of Karma Kanda. So, if you understand that and then look at this mantra, it's easier to understand. Right? So, Vishuddha Sattvaha. Vishuddha Sattva is the mind the one whose mind is pure, free from Ragadvesha. We already saw, free of the Panchakleshas. So, Shina Kleshaha, Panchaklesha, Shina Panchakleshas. And therefore only pure Antakarna. He's got Chitta Shuddhi. What does a person do? Bhuti Kamaha. So you have to look at the word Bhuti Kamaha first. Where is the word Bhuti Kamaha? It is in the last line. And you have to break up that last word into He, Archayet, Bhuti Kamaha. Bhuti Kamaha is the person who is desirous of worldly benefits. One who desires material benefits. What does he do? He archayet. He worships the jnani. So sadhana is jnani pujanam. Why? Because we said the jnani is not different from Ishvara, and that is fine. So sadhana is jnani pujanam. And why is it said that jnani pujanam is the same as Ishvara? The difference between a jnani and the what you call ajnani is what? The ajnani has an ahankara, which is to say that I am this body mind complex. So you can call it self-directed ahankara. He says, I am this body mind complex, I am. Right? And the jnani, that self-directed ahankara is not there, because he doesn't say I am the body mind complex. He says I am Ishvara. And that you cannot call self-directed ahankara, because Ishvara is everywhere. So that self is with a big S. That's not ahankara. That is a statement of fact, because I am Ishvara, I am everything. Right? Why is this ahankara so important? Now, who else doesn't have ahankara? For example, you look at a dog show, right? The dogs in the show don't have ahankaras. So you have, let us say, a very beautiful little white dog who won the first prize. So when it comes out, or when it stands on that number 1, 2, 3, it doesn't think that I am better than the number 2, right? Because it doesn't have a self-directed ahankara, right? He might have, the owner of course might have that ego and say, I am better than the owner of the person who came in the dog who came in number 2. But that is because he's a human being. He has ahankara. The dog doesn't. And therefore, and that is the very reason why you can worship a Shiva Lingam, right? Because the stone has no ahankara. And therefore, the stone is not different from the jnani in that respect. Because self-directed ahankara is not there. Therefore, using the same logic, why you can worship a stone, which is what you are invoking Ishvara on the stone. The same logic, you can worship the jnani because you are invoking Ishvara on the jnani. Right? That's one point which we should know. Why we are able to worship a jnani. And the second point is that when I worship the jnana or the Shiva Lingam, the blessings are not given by the lingam. Remember, the blessings are given by the deity which is invoked. So Lord Shiva is invoked on the lingam, and therefore whenever I seek anugraha, my anugraha comes from Lord Shiva, not from the stone. Similarly, when I seek blessings from the jnani, my anugraha, it comes from the jnani. I mean, it comes from Ishvara, not through the jnani. Therefore, whenever the idea here being said is that whenever you worship, there is no set format to worship. You can worship in any way you want. So we do say that for gurus and acharyas and jnanis, pada puja, washing the feet, etc. That is a way of worshipping. But that's only cultural, right? And Krishna himself says in the Bhagavad Gita, patram pushpam phalam toyam. Worship in any way you want. So this particular set formats of worship, what are they? They are only cultural in nature. You can worship mentally also in any way you want. All that is required is that you should invoke Ishvara on the object of your worship, and therefore you can invoke in any way you want. And whatever being said in this mantra is that since the jnani is no different from Ishvara, that is and therefore he has the powers of Ishvara. In the sense, again we are saying, all blessings which come through the jnani, they come only from Ishvara. And therefore, if you are seeking material prosperity, you can worship that jnani also instead of Ishvara. The blessings will come anyway. It is worded in such a way here that the jnani will give you the blessings, but we should understand that the blessings actually come from Ishvara. So you can worship a jnani. It's a mantra in praise of the jnani. It's a jnani stutihi. And that's very common because a lot of students worship their gurus. So with this, we'll stop for today. Any questions? The particular
Om Sir.
chapter is over. Yes, Vinita.
This is like in the end of Tattva Bodha, we have that the cow is not concerned whether the garland is on her or not.
Yeah.
Same stuti of the jnani.
The jnani's thing is that he identifies with Ishvara.
Right.
Right? But then that's only at the jnani level. One should remember that and not have any unrealistic expectations.
True.
So much, Acharya.
Yes, Kush.
When you mentioned that the word avidya, and you break it up in, it means atma and anatma mixed. How did you break up the meaning of the word in Sanskrit? What were the subwords?
I didn't break it up. Avidya is what? Vidya. What is Vidya? Vidya is knowledge.
Okay.
What is knowledge? Knowledge is that I am Brahman. What is avidya? The lack of knowledge that I am Brahman. So this you have to extract from Tattva Bodha.
Okay.
Nitya, Anitya, Aviveka is avidya.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Acharya.
All right. So with this, we'll stop. Thank you for your patience. Next class, we'll start the last section of the last chapter. Om Purnamada Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat
Purnamudachyate
Purnamadaya
Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate.
Shanti
Shanti, Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti.
Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your
Shivaya.
presence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charity.